We've had some technical issues on channel 9, so we are on channel 8, lovely Facebook and YouTube this evening. The City of Peabody Zoning Board of Appeals meets remotely this evening in accordance with Massachusetts general laws and Governor Baker's March 15th, 2020 order imposing, excuse me, strict limitations, excuse me, on the number of people that may gather in one place. This special meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted yet, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Individuals may participate remotely in the meeting via a participation platform called Zoom. This evening, we have a continued application of 15 King Street. Before we begin, we have some correspondences that need to be accepted into the record. I will read what they are at this point. I need a motion to accept the following correspondences. On 4/29/21, a DPS memo. 4/13/21, tie-in bond memo. 3/9/21, DCI response to a 1/29/21 tie-in bond memo. 4/26/21, a World Tech memo. 5/4/21, DCI revised site plan. 5/4/21, DCI response to 4/2/21 Horsley Witten. 5/4/21, DCI response to a 4/8/21 Weston and Sampson. 5/4/21, DCI response to a 4/9/21 DPS. 5/5/21, Van Ness response to a 4/29/21 DPS and World Tech 4/26/21 memos. And 5/10/21, a correspondence from DPS. May I have a motion to receive all those correspondences?
So moved.
All in favor? I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now going to hear from Attorney Panos, and we have a follow-up on traffic and a civil presentation. And the platform is yours, Attorney Panos.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm happy to say we are winding this down, at least with respect to addressing the peer review comments. We got a letter, a memo from, as you indicated, DPS and Will Pollitt's today, just a few hours ago. And it is a 4-page-ish memo from the initial memo of around 20 pages. That's not bad. For the record, I am Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street, Peabody, Massachusetts. I represent the applicant and property owner HDG King LLC. Tonight is a continuation of the hearing opened by this board on October 5th, continued to November 9th, 2020, December 7th, 2020, and April 12, 2021, when public comment was invited. We are prepared to complete the development, traffic, and parking analysis and continue to provide a detailed analysis of civil items, including water, wastewater, and stormwater for the proposed development. The conclusion of the traffic presentation prepared by the applicant's traffic engineer, Scott Thornton, of Vanessa and Associates, reflected in its correspondence to the board of May 5th and just accepted by you, was based on review of the proposed development by the ZBA's traffic consultant, World Tech, by its letter of December 23rd, 2020, a follow-up memorandum by DPS of February 1, 2021, and April 9th, 2021. A follow-up DPS memo, as I indicated, and you accepted into the record of today, May 10th, with accompanying World Tech memorandum of May 7th, was provided to us a few hours ago, and we believe that tonight we will be able to close the presentations on traffic and parking tonight. By correspondence and materials provided by Design Consultants, Inc. to the ZBA, and its peer review consultants Horsley Witten, Weston and Sampson, and Ty and Bond, all dated March 9th and May 5th. The applicants for responses were provided pursuant to that to the DPS memoranda and attached letters and memoranda, which will be presented at tonight's hearing. In June, we also intend to give presentations on design, landscaping, and lighting, which are not subject to peer review. We are happy to report, as I indicated, with regard to traffic and parking and outstanding civil matters, the applicant and its development team are more in agreement than they are apart on substantive proposed project impacts, and the proposed development is substantially improved as a result. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I believe that the peer review process established by this board and which has evolved through this process, which began back in October, is working. And I believe that as a result, the proposed changes to the plans presented and which will be presented tonight are substantially better than that which were presented with the application. Mass Housing, it is important to note, which issued the project eligibility letter for the site, has been made aware of all of the modifications and was provided with all responsive peer review correspondence and plans by email sent to the ZBA and copies to it of March 25th and May 5th of this year. By way of introduction, Al Chow is the senior project manager for the applicant, and he's here with us tonight. And Wayne Kiefner of Design Consultants, Inc., DCI, will conclude discussion on the traffic impacts. Our traffic engineer is not with us tonight, Scott Thornton, and will also provide a thorough presentation on the civil items mentioned. General points of mention with regard to traffic. In brief, the plan modifications since April 12th, last month, include reoriented and relocated trash areas to improve trash pickup, pedestrian pathways refined from parking areas to buildings, especially for Building B, revised landscape planting at development entrance and exits to ensure adequate sightlines for drivers. Importantly, ADA compatible and accessible features, replacing the sidewalk and curbing bounding the property at King and Ellsworth Road, and installing ADA compatible features requested by peer review. Mitigation measures for surrounding intersections, increase of ratio of full-size to compact size spaces within the site, accommodation for truck turning radii for fire trucks in response to Captain Dowling's comments of October 5th of last year, trash and delivery trucks as depicted on plans provided to the ZBA and the peer review consultants, and importantly, ensuring elimination of any crossover of oncoming, entering and exiting truck traffic with regard to commercial vehicles, that's trash trucks and delivery trucks. We cannot avoid the crossover of fire trucks entering and exiting the site. However, we believe that fire trucks will hopefully enter and exit the site infrequently and have the adequate siren and lighting apparatus to alert oncoming traffic of their presence. So in my conversation with Captain Dowling recently, he did not seem that concerned about that crossover traffic. To continue, maintaining a reasonable parking space to unit ratio to ensure that parking needs will fully be met on site without the anticipated need for on-street parking within the neighborhood. We believe this is very important, and we don't want to reduce further our parking ratio of over 1.5 spaces per unit. Identification of rideshare and shuttle alternatives through the North Shore Transportation Management Association to mitigate the need for parking on site. We believe very strongly that this has the potential to provide a transportation alternative to the proposed residences. But the fact is the North Shore TMA is an untested concept right now. People are paying in, but they're not up and running. They are not operational. And that's important for reasons you'll hear soon. We view those issues, however, regarding driveway slope into building C garage, ratio of full to compact spaces beyond that proposed, and increase of parking aisle widths to be internal operational development matters, posing no impact to the proposed residences, the neighborhood, or the community at large. And we therefore do not see the need for further condition to the comprehensive permit in that regard. To drive this point, the city will not be maintaining any portion of the property. No snow clearing, no trash collection, no road cleaning, no appurtenance maintenance within the site. These items are fully the responsibility of the applicant and its property manager, and we will agree to a condition to the comprehensive permit in that regard through a necessary operations and maintenance plan. Similarly, we view the issue regarding size and location of on-site snow storage areas, as was raised, to be such an internal operation and development matter having no impact on the proposed residences, the neighborhood, or the community at large. We will contract with an outside company for snow removal, and we will agree to a condition to the comprehensive permit in that regard. Also, because parking will be provided to residents by easement or deed, the property manager cannot encroach on parking areas designated for the use of others by deed or easement. This should all but eliminate this concern, which, as I indicated, is again an operational property management in nature, having no impact on the proposed residents, the neighborhood, and the community at large. Additionally, the applicant has agreed to pay up to $60,000 in mitigation measures requested at the intersection of Lowell, King, and Endicott Streets, detailed in the Vanessa and Associates Incorporated May 15th, 2021 memorandum to this board, and which it estimates will be the total cost, including contingency, of the mitigation work improving the city's existing appurtenances there. The applicant has also agreed to pay up to $20,000 to install ADA compatible features requested at the intersection of King and Ellsworth Road, detailed also in the Vanessa and Associates May 5, 2021 memorandum to the board, and which it also estimates will be the total cost of the mitigation work using existing city-owned appurtenances there. To be clear, the need for the above referenced improvements pre-exists the proposed development as detailed in the referenced DPS and peer review memorandum. They exist despite this proposed development. But the applicant feels that these improvements will benefit the neighborhood and in doing so make the development better. We believe that because these items are public works type projects in nature, however, requiring road closures and other interruptions to traffic flow, that this work be performed by the city, which is best equipped to handle these projects of this nature, but however paid for by the applicant as explained. General points on civil matters, and to introduce Wayne Kiefner's comments and to frame them. The proposed development presents a marked improvement over the existing condition for a whole host of reasons that Wayne will get into in very specific detail through a PowerPoint presentation. While there are many features in that regard, reduction in impervious lot coverage, installation of stormwater mitigation appurtenances, increase in green space and limiting ingress and egress to and from the site to King Street, and excluding ingress and egress from Ellsworth Road and Southwick Road are among them. We will also investigate the condition of the stormwater appurtenances located in the private right-of-way, Southwick Road, as recommended by DPS, but make no mistake, those appurtenances are private appurtenances that belong to both the residences in Southwick Road and to the property owners. And again, we believe that that investigation, resulting investigation, will be addressed as necessary when we figure out what's going on with those stormwater drainage systems. Right now, we just recently learned that the city isn't maintaining them. And so we want to investigate from an operational standpoint what's going on there, and we'll address any necessary upgrades if we need to. Similar to traffic concerns, we view the issues of condition of those stormwater appurtenances in Southwick Road as an operational affair, as I indicated, which will be addressed by the applicant as necessary and appropriate to ensure the proper function of the proposed stormwater management system, which, by the way, there is none now. There is no, under the existing condition, any stormwater management. The water sheets off the site and goes wherever it's going to go, mostly down King Street and Southwick Road into Lowell Street, down Endicott Street. We help fix that through our proposed plans that you will hear about tonight. Additionally, we have agreed to pay for but not perform the city's inflow and infiltration project referenced in the tie-in bond memorandum of January 2021 for a contribution of up to $210,000. This I&I project is one designated by the city irrespective of the proposed development. And we had a choice, pay the I&I fee or do the I&I project proposed. We chose to do the project. We feel, however, that this project, for the reasons already mentioned, is best undertaken by the city because this is the city's designated I&I project in the nature of a public works project requiring potential opening of Lowell Street, traffic mitigation measures, traffic rerouting, detours, and the like. We do not think that we are best able to handle that type of project. We think the city is better able to corral the resources necessary on our dime to do these projects. However, and importantly, it was mentioned that in Mr. Politz's most recent memo, that the $210,000 obligation does not include the cost to conduct, dig, or replace spot repairs on the pipe. We cannot agree to an open-ended caveat of that nature. If it's open-ended, we will simply pay the I&I fee and not do the I&I project because we have a pretty good idea based on a formula prescribed by the city, what that I&I fee is going to be based on generated sewage flow from the site. And so I will put it to the city. If you are going to ask us to do the I&I project, we will happily do it with a cap. If there is no cap and it's an open-ended obligation, we are going to simply pay the I&I fee. So with that, the civil presentation will be further presented in detail in this regard. And I, through the chair to the rest of the board, give it to Wayne Kiefner to present his PowerPoint presentation, unless you have any questions to this point before we get into the technical presentation.
Anybody have any questions to this point?
Through the chair, if I may. James, I know we had talked about this last time with the parking, and since we last met on this one here, I've given it some more thought. I guess just one concern I have, and I know that peer review seems to be relatively okay with it. But one concern I still do have with the parking is that these are going to be assigned parking spots for the units. And while the 1.52 per unit is sufficient on its face, my fear is that even though the inside stuff is operational in nature, spillover from that is obviously no longer operational. It's now having an impact in the neighborhood. And not criticism, but the concern I have is 130 something odd units. During the week, probably not a problem. My concern is more on the weekends. What happens if 5 units have people over? And each of those units needs 3 cars. That takes up the visitor parking real quick, and it completely uses it up. And that's just a concern I'd have, that if there's a sweet 16, a birthday party, an anniversary, whatever it is, something comes in and you have 10, 15 different vehicles visiting one unit amongst some other things as general visitors coming in. It's just a concern I have that we're going to get spillover into the streets.
If I can answer that question, first of all, in constructing our parking formula, we relied on the parking utilization study that was conducted by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which basically prescribed in their best fit phase 3 study that focused on Peabody, among other North Shore communities, commuter-oriented developments, which had between 1 space and 1 1/4 spaces prescribed per unit. And at that, in the worst case scenario, they were at 96% parking utilization. We provide 1.5 spaces per unit, which is well above that. And so we believe based on that best fit study, that will not be a great concern. It's a great question, and it's something we've looked at, which is why we don't want to compromise further our parking ratio, by the way. We do not want to create fewer parking spaces by accommodating more full-size spaces, compromising that 1.5 unit, 1.5 parking space per unit sweet spot, which we believe is adequate. We will also agree to maintain the existing no parking zones in front of the site along King Street and anywhere else where the city deems it appropriate around the site. So I'm not sure if there are no parking signs on Ellsworth Road, but we would agree as a condition. Again, it would be a DPS project, I think, but we would agree to that mitigation. We feel strongly that our parking provision is adequate to meet the needs both for the residents and their visitors. And we also believe that with other ride-sharing alternatives that we will not only be providing, but the opportunities that simply exist, the need to get to the site by visitors through simply driving there also spill over to those ride-share alternatives. People will be using alternative means of transportation to access the site. I hope that answers the question, but I just want to drive the point home in concluding that we didn't arrive at this willy-nilly. We arrived at this based on the studies that were produced and commissioned on behalf of and by the city. And we feel fairly strongly that our parking ratio was adequate. And we don't want to see it reduced.
No, I agree. I wouldn't want to see it reduced either. That does help answer it a little bit, especially if we can do something with a condition about the street parking. Yep. I understand that the parking spots on site are designated per unit. So that was more of my concern, that even if only 50% of the spots are used because of people using Uber, commuter rail, bus, whatever, that a visitor may not be able to park in space 197 because that may be owned by unit 133. And that was just more of my concern.
And there is provision throughout for visitor parking and ride share spaces. That was one of the vast improvements over the initial plans that we presented on April 12th was that signage plan, if you want to go back to it, which designates visitor parking, rideshare, loading and unloading zones, just better general traffic circulation throughout the site internally. So good question, and I hope my answer was adequate.
Yes, thank you, Jason.
Through the chair, if I just could, and I just wanted to express a little bit of a concern. I had the same concerns as Stevens out the parking, but the public transportation obviously interests me. That's how I made my living for some years. I'm really interested in hearing these other options for public transportation because there's really not a lot. I mean, I'm kind of dismayed with your feelings towards the transit authority, the North Shore, because there was another we just approved, and because we brought up the point that there was lack of public transportation, the TMA was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and the reason why they didn't feel, the developer didn't feel there were any other reasons, because this was such a fantastic organization. And so I'm kind of dismayed that it sort of changes from location to location. But that being said, I'm really interested in your rideshare or your options that you're going to bring forward tonight, because I see little hope there, but maybe you pull the rabbit out of your hat. So thank you.
Look, if I could answer that question through the chair, I want to make it very clear. I am very excited about the North Shore TMA and the prospects and the potential it has. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying anything inconsistent tonight or through this application process than I said with the friendly 40B on Farm Avenue. I am not. I am very willing, and keep in mind the reason why the applicant agreed to joining the North Shore TMA is because we brought it forward. We brought it forward through Farm Avenue, and I was very happy to bring it forward on their behalf. Everybody was excited about it and continues to be excited about it. But make no mistake about it, it's a concept right now. People are paying into it, Barry.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, and it's not up in service. And I hope it works. I want it to work. I'm excited for it to work. So here's what I'm willing, and I've given this thought. The city of Peabody joined the North Shore TMA as well. Okay? Peabody Main Street's joined the North Shore TMA, but the city of Peabody joined it. And Kurt, where are you? I see you as a square with a name, but through the chair, if I could ask you to confirm that the city of Peabody, in fact, did join the North Shore TMA. Is that true?
I believe the Chamber of Commerce joined, and then we had given grant money to Main Streets for them to participate. So Main Streets and the city of Peabody you just may be confusing. We provided funding to Main Streets for it.
Through a grant, because what I was going to recommend is I am willing to propose that we will be a member as long as the city is a member. We want it to work. We believe that this will substantially, if it lives up to its full potential, we believe that the ridership will counter Uber and Lyft, because it's going to be rideshare on demand on a larger scale, servicing employers, servicing larger density developments. And so I have no problem with it. I'm excited about it. I just don't know whether it's going to be there in a couple of years. That's my concern. It was my concern on Farm Avenue. It's my concern here. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm happy. I'm happy to even agree through my client, through the applicant, to a condition. But I'd like to shorten the span of the condition, because the bottom line is it's no skin off our apple. We're going to be charging it out as a result of through the condo fees. It's not like it's going to be, we're going to be paying for it out of our pocket. That's not the issue. The issue is its long-term viability, which is in question because it's not up and running yet.
And I just have one concern. It's probably not even a concern, just a thought that runs through my head and through the chair to Will. Some of the mitigation, the request that the city perform the work and all of that.
Yeah.
I just was sort of wondering what your thoughts on that are, because mine are that once we do it, we own it forever. And I guess that would happen. Would that happen if they did it privately? Could they be responsible for if something should happen down the road as far as a major repair or anything like that? What are your thoughts on that? On the surface, I guess I don't have a big problem, but I'd really like to know what your thoughts are.
You're on mute, Will. Still on mute, Will.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, great. I'm not sure I wasn't muted, but I think my computer apparently was. Apologize. Through the chair, if I may, Barry, I'm happy to answer that. I'm actually happy to, at some point, go through our memorandum that we provided last minute to you today and to go share my thoughts on all the items that we think are outstanding. But in respect to, I'll try to keep it specific so I can address your comments, address my comments later. So Barry, are you talking wastewater or are you talking street mitigation particularly? But I can answer both. I can answer as much as you want right now, or I can wait. You're on mute now, Barry. So I can't hear Barry, so I will just proceed. So
Barry, we can't hear you.
I will wait if you're going to address that later. I have no problem with.
Yeah, and I'm happy to address it later. Yes, absolutely. I can address our whole thing, including what we believe the city should be doing in respect to this project and what we think the applicant should be doing. We can go through each item.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can do that at any time the chair wishes.
Thank you.
Jason, did you have somebody else to present?
Yes, so without anything further through the chair to the rest of the board and anybody participating or listening in, if Wayne Kiefner can present his PowerPoint and the details of wrapping up the traffic and the civil presentation, that'd be great. Wayne?
Thank you, Jason. For the record, my name is Wayne Kiefner. I'm a civil engineer. I'm a PE and PTOE. I work at Design Consultants, Inc. in Somerville, Mass. We're the civil engineers for the project, but I'm going to talk through some of the traffic stuff just because Scott Thornton can't be here tonight. So we have two things if I can share my screen. The first is just a PDF of the previous plan set, or the most recent plan set that was submitted. With that, I'll really just walk through the turning movements that Jason referenced. And then after that, I can open up the PowerPoint for the civil portion of it. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so you should see a drawing that says preliminary site development. Can everyone see that? Okay, perfect. So let me skip through. So this is the most recent plan set that included revisions for various comments that were received from the peer reviewers and from DPS. And let me skip through to the turning movement ones. And the only reason I'm skipping through all these, I'm going to come back to these in the PowerPoint and it'll be more clear in the PowerPoint. Okay, but The turning movement ones I didn't want to look at here only because they're a little smaller. And if I just explain one, then it'll kind of be obvious to you. So what we did was on these, and please interrupt me if I'm too fast or too slow. We did entering and exit plans for delivery vehicles, in which we use an SU-30, a single unit 30 vehicle, as well as trash pickup. And we also did the PBD ladder truck for emergency access in and out. And as Jason mentioned, the commercial vehicles, the loading trucks and the garbage trucks all stay within their designated lane. And so what I'm going to do, I want to zoom in here. I'm just going to talk you through just a little piece of this and explain what some of these lines are that you're seeing. So on King Street, there's currently parking on the far side of the street from our site. Okay. So, and can you see my little magnifying glass here? Okay. So this little line that I'm kind of tracing over is a 7-foot, and none of this is striped out there, but we drew in a 7-foot parking lane, okay, along that entire curb line. And then with the rest of the pavement in between our new curb line and that parking lane, we drew in a dashed roadway center line. Now this center line doesn't exist out there today. There's no striped center line, but we use that as our limit of our vehicles turning in and out of our site. Okay, does that all make sense? So this movement, if you can follow my magnifying glass, this is a loading truck coming in and pulling around up to the front door of this building, building C. This movement over here is the same thing up here to building A. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I can walk through all these, or we can just walk through a couple if that's fine. This is, again, an entering maneuver into a designated loading area adjacent to building B. Okay. So those are the entering delivery movements. Our next sheet that we sent is our delivery vehicle exiting movements. Okay. And so what these do is I clipped it a little bit, but they begin where our entering vehicles ended, and they show the maneuvers. For instance, here, this vehicle is backing up, and then it pulls forward, exits through, and then crosses over into the southbound lane. I guess that might be. Does that make sense? And I don't want to beat all these to death. It's because they're all kind of similar. Again, this is where this vehicle ended in the entering movement. It backs down and then pulls around and then exits out. So most of these, the real controlling movement is the entering movement. Okay, and that's only because we were very we tried a lot to keep them into their own lanes, as Jason had mentioned previously. This is a similar diagram of where the garbage trucks would enter. So again, this line right here is the center line of the roadway, not including the parking lane. And as you can see, the garbage trucks can pull into the dumpster pad locations without crossing those lines and pick up those dumpsters. That's what these maneuvers all show. Is that clear? Am I going too fast? Okay. And then this one is just those same maneuvers exiting, and obviously the exiting maneuver is easier because they can cross over the lane. They're not restricted to that tight turn in. Okay, and then these last ones, again, these are the ladders circulating around the site. Okay, a couple of things that make these ladder movements easier, as well as the commercial vehicles, is our normal drive aisles are 20 feet wide. Okay, but what we found was there's kind of a pinch point on these curved areas, as well as at the entrances. And so what we did was the curved areas up here, we widened those to 22 feet, as well as we widened the entrance width to 24 feet. Okay, so by the combination of those two things really helped out, as Jason had mentioned, getting those vehicles from crossing over those center lines. Does all that make sense? Okay. Any questions on this? Because I'm gonna close this PowerPoint and this PDF and open up the PowerPoint, if that's okay.
Fran, if I may ask a question? Sure. So just Wayne, can you verify that the trash trucks specifically, and also the delivery trucks, they do not need to back out onto King Street to exit the property. Is that correct? Can you go through
That is-
how the trash truck would pick up that lower dumpster and how he is going to exit back out onto the off the
Yep.
property?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is that maneuver. So you'll recall, I don't want to make people dizzy flipping around, but here's the entering movement for that garbage truck specifically. Pull straight in. It's fully in the site. The property line, it's really hard to see, but it's right under this cursor here. It's right at the back of sidewalk is where the property line is, okay? So garbage truck pulls up, doesn't cross the center line. Well, let me explain a couple of things just on these. You see there's lots of lines where these trucks are turning. The dash line is actually the body overhang part, okay? And the solid line is the wheel travel path. So the solid line can't cross over curbing and things like that, but the dash line can. And that's because it's really just the bumper line, okay? So if you see these dash lines crossing over things, that's okay. It's just a bumper line, okay? So this is the entering maneuver for the garbage truck, pull straight in. This slide shows that exiting maneuver. And so this is where it is. It backs out, not into the road, not even across property line, and then through this kind of loading area, makes this maneuver to pull out. So none of the commercial vehicles, even the ladder, but none of them need to back out onto the street to get in or out.
Okay. Through the chair, if I could, the other exiting patterns, all right? It seems like they all require that the vehicles have to back up. And one of them, I think, almost like 20 parking spaces of length just to make that turn. Is that correct? They have to back up that whole section of roadway.
It is correct because we had the loading vehicles
Okay.
go to the main entrance of the building, and that's where that main entrance is.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on these, or should I go to the civil part?
Can I, if I could ask just the question about the ramp at the very far right, is that civil or is that?
It's civil. We can
Okay.
talk about that in the civil part.
This is Janet Bernardo. Can I ask a quick question? I
Yes,
can't.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm just wondering with this trash maneuver coming in, that if there's any vehicles that are leaving or queuing to exit the site, is this something that happens like off hours? So you're not worried about people leaving the property so that, because the trash truck has to go through the exit? Is there a concern about that?
I don't think there's a large concern about it. I think we acknowledge that there might be some times when there's vehicles coming in or out where one will need to yield to the other, but that's very common for, whether it's a development like this or even an office park, or, that seems to happen quite a lot.
But typically they will come in the morning?
Usually depending on their route, right? So the particular building that my office is in, we happen to be located pretty close to where the trash trucks are stored overnight. So we're one of the first ones on their route, but I think it more depends where along the route you are. I think the intent here, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a private contractor, so there'll be a lot more ability to make their schedule than there might be if it were public.
That's exactly right. My experience with doing private contracting with trash, commercial delivery, less so the Amazons of the world, is that you can contract for trash collection at a time when it's most convenient for the development. So in this case, it would obviously be during off-peak times when people are at work. Hopefully, once we are released from the grip of COVID and COVID pandemic restrictions and people are actually going to work, you know, that we would make an effort to, and not working from home, we would make an effort to schedule those trash collections during a time when the parking lot is less filled.
If I could, through the chair, to Mr. Keefner, and this is all based on one delivery truck per time. What would happen if there was more than one that ends up on that roadway? Is there enough room for them both to back up or to get around each other? I'm just looking at, you know, if those parking spaces were full, or even if they weren't full, if there was, you know, 6 or 7 cars and, you know, the way they were situated in those parking spaces, would it present a problem if more than one delivery truck was to be up there at one time and getting out? I'll tell you, I only have 4 houses on my street, and it seems like I see the Amazon guy or the you know, delivery guy, the FedEx, the UPS guy quite often. So with the number of units, I'm kind of saying that there might be times when there's at least more than one vehicle trying to use that pattern at once. And
Sure.
Is it big enough to do that? That's
sure. And so you know, this vehicle we're showing is way bigger than like the standard Amazon vans that deliver, you know, everywhere. It's a single unit truck, so it's like a huge U-Haul or a lot of it. You know, it's not a tractor trailer, so it doesn't have a trailer. It's one unit, but the wheelbase on it is 30 feet long. So this might be the type of truck you see that you know, might be delivering you know, to restaurants or something like that. It's a large truck. So we also have this loading space out here where they could certainly queue if they needed to.
So through the chair, if I may, Fran. So just for clarification, both trash trucks and delivery trucks can't access the property. If people are queuing to get out of the property, they'll have to sit there on King Street to wait to gain access onto the property while waiting for the residents to leave, and then have someone yield if necessary for them to come in on the property.
I would say that depends where they are. I mean, for instance, if this driveway has a queue of folks trying to leave, then sure, the truck obviously can't come into this dumpster. You know, but if there's a queue here, then the truck is actually going back up here, you know, then there's no delay. I would say it depends on the situation. I could certainly see situations where that could happen, and that's typical everywhere. At every drive entrance to any development, that's typical, unless it's signalized.
And if I could just speak to that a little bit more, that's the advantage of having 2 ingress and egress points, is that there are alternatives in the event of that queuing. That the truck could drive on past the first point and access through the second.
Anything further on this, or should we go to the civil portion part?
Let's go to the civil.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second while I share a different screen. Okay, so a lot of this is repeat, but it's been a while since the first civil one. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of these, and we're not going to read every word, but we'll try to point out some of the things on it. So total site area, a little over 3 acres. R2 zone. Jason went over the various roads: King Street, Southwick, Ellsworth. The site is pretty slopey. That's a technical word. From a high of around elevation 90 and a low of around 79. The existing site fully developed, and there's currently no water quality type stormwater system on site, meaning there's no, the existing catch basins aren't deep sump. So that's the existing conditions. This is just a plan of it to orient everybody. This is can everyone see this little pointer here? Yeah, okay, so this is the existing hospital building, King Street on page down, Ellsworth on the left, and Southwick to the top. Lowell Street, there's an abutter between us and Lowell Street, but Lowell Street down over this way. Okay. So obviously 3 separate buildings. These are, after one of the first meetings we were at, they were pushed towards King Street, 2 drives off the site, like Jason mentioned. This is our current site plan. And we're going to highlight some of the changes that we made recently. So the 24-foot aisles, right? I'm sorry, entry drives. These were previously 20, those were widened to 24. These curved aisles, 22 feet, those were, again, they were 20 feet before. The trash areas relocated. And just to clarify some of the concerns with the trash areas, all of the trash areas are on our site. Southwick Road, the actual width of Southwick Road is very narrow. A lot of what is perceived as Southwick Road is actually just pavement that happens to be on our site. This is the additional sidewalk along Ellsworth that we've agreed to relay. This is that curved drive. This was changed from a straight drive with kind of a 9-degree turn at the top and bottom to a more curved drive. That did a couple things. It saved on those turning movements directly into the garage, and now it's not a 9-degree turn anymore, and it made it a little longer for us so we could get that slope down just a little bit. Okay, and then we added this loading bay. As Jason mentioned previously, we have some additional signage that are on a separate sheet. We can go over those if you need it, but we have visitor parking and other things like that. So this is the updated site plan. Stormwater, we did a couple rounds of testing, one in December 2020, one in February 2021. Those were performed by licensed soil evaluator in Massachusetts, witnessed by the city. I think we did 7 in total. Groundwater was found to be between 54 and 72 inches. The sands or the soils out there are sandy loams, so it's pretty good sands. They drain pretty well. If I'm going too fast, just please somebody slow down. This is just a graphic showing where the test pits are. These little circles are all the test pits. Our stormwater decreases runoff and volume for all the storms, 210, 25, 100. We decrease the impervious area from existing over 11,000 square feet. We have improved TSS removal, which is water quality, and we are increasing recharge to groundwater. Stormwater wise, our site is considered a redevelopment per the stormwater handbook. As such, there are certain things that we don't need to fully comply with the regulations. We comply as much as we can, and we need to make things better than they are in the existing. As Jason mentioned, most of the site drains by sheet flow just across the parking areas and then into the roadways. It's untreated. We are proposing to have all of our roof runoff, which is considered clean by the stormwater handbook, tributary to infiltration areas. That's the recharge. That's clean water. It's considered clean water by the stormwater handbook. The other site runoff is collected in deep sump hooded catch basins. The deep sumps allow for particulate matter to settle out. The hoods trap floatables in there, usually petroleums. And this increases or this provides water quality treatment. Again, a large, this is a betterment over the existing conditions that's out there. We do have connections to the existing municipal storm systems in King Street and Southwick Road. These are just the next, okay, so stormwater wise, I'm just going to glaze over this. We have 3 design points. Our analysis shows that we are decreasing both peak rate and the volume to each of those design points. The rates vary, and I'll get to a slide that shows that, but for peak flow up to 87% and for volume up to 85%. These are just slides of the tributary areas. If you're not used to seeing that, you know, it probably just looks like red marks, but this is just showing the design points. This is an important slide. So this shows the percent reduction of rate and volume for the 3 various design points for the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year storms. As you can see, the biggest decreases are in the smaller storms, the 2-year storm, 10-year storm. But it should be noted that even though those are smaller storms, those are the much more frequent storms. So there's a lot of focus on increasing treatment and decreasing volumes for those more frequent, less intense storms. But again, we're decreasing the rate of runoff and the volume for all storms for all design points. This is just our pipe sizing stuff. Or I should say our criteria. The pipes inside the site are all designed for 10-year storm. That's standard for private drilling, as well as that's standard for DOT roadway projects. Our on-site pipes are plastic, and our pipes that cross over into the municipal right-of-way are reinforced concrete pipe. This is just a graphic of the systems. There's 2 infiltration systems. System 1 is over here. This takes 2 roofs and a little bit of parking and connects to Southwick. System 2 is over here. This takes building A as well as some parking, and then connects down over here into King Street. We can back over any of these slides if you need to, if I'm going too fast. In general utilities, we had hydrant flow tests that showed good flows, good pressures. There was a request by DPS. We previously were showing 2 connections for each building, 1 for fire, 1 for domestic. There was a request to make just 1 connection per building and then split those to domestic and fire. Those we did do that, and those were split inside the site. And I have a graphic that shows that. The sewers connect directly onto King Street. That capacity probably doesn't mean much to most people, but there's a lot of capacity in King Street for sewer. And that shows it's about a 2.5% increase in that. And as Jason mentioned, pursuant to the time bond recommendation, the project is willing to fund those I&I improvements. This is just a graphic showing those connections. The blue is the water. Again, 1 connection for each building. It splits inside the site for domestic and fire protection. The green is our sewer. These lighter blue lines are just the hydrant locations. Again, we'll coordinate these final hydrant locations with the fire department. We're showing 1 per building. There's code requirements to be within a certain distance of the fire department connection for each building. So I think we have them located in a decent spot, but we can shift them around. It's no problem for us. And with that, that's all I have.
Okay, you can stop sharing if you don't mind. Okay, so I know that we still need to hear from Will, right?
Correct.
So does anyone have any questions before we go on to Mr. Pollitt? Okay, Will, go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, William Pollitt, city engineer, city of Peabody. So I apologize for the late communication that we sent over this afternoon. But with that being said, we received the revised plans on May 5th, which gave us about 4 days to get it back into our schedule for review. So if I may take the few minutes of the board's time this evening, I'll just quickly go through our memorandum. It's mainly items, or pretty much I think everything I'll talk about is either an item that we picked up very recently, which I think is few and far between, and they're mainly items that we do not fully agree with the applicant on their mitigation or their design. So the first one is, we just want to make sure the applicant is aware that they do have a 6-inch water main on Southwick Road that's going to have to be cut out. The teeth going to be cut out and the valves will have to be removed. And that will have to take place prior to demo of the building. We'll need the service disconnected. That was mentioned in the Weston Sampson memorandum, but it was never mentioned in our particular memorandum, so we wanted to let the applicant be aware. Something we realized recently on a site walk when I was out there, I was out on Southwick Road. There appears to be a hydrant on Southwick Road. The applicant's going to have to determine what they're doing with that hydrant. It faces the parking lot of the hospital, and there's a retaining wall going in right behind it. So that fire hydrant will be useless to the fire department, and once this property is developed. So they either need to relocate that hydrant and or get permission from the fire department to, I guess, discontinue it if that's what they're looking to do. So that's another item that we recently picked up. So that pretty much wraps up water. We did ask them to make the changes that Wayne went over to minimize the cuts into the street and also the tapping of our water main to bring off a single service per unit and then bring the domestic off of it. So wastewater, as Jason pointed out, generally speaking, the applicants get an option between paying infiltration removal fund into that fund based upon the gallons per day they're generating, or to take on an II project. In this particular case, the applicant's going to be required to take on the II project and not pay into this fund. Per the time bond memorandum, it is questionable if we have capacity in our source system for this development as is. So they're cleaning in the lining of this pipe and getting rid of any bows that may potentially be on Lowell Street. If there are, we don't know because we haven't cambered it. Would be required of the applicant to take on prior to discharging their sanitary flow into the source system. So with that being said, if this was more of a traditional project where we didn't think we had an II issue or a capacity issue, the applicant would be looking to pay just over $240,000. It'd be $243,100 is what the fee would be based upon the number of bedrooms. Currently, the time bond memorandum is estimating their work to be between $180,000 and $210,000. But with that being said, if there's bows in the pipe or there's an issue with the pipe that has to be they have to dig and replace it, that price will go up. And that would be on the applicant to resolve that issue. In respect to the city taking on the project, we don't camera, we don't line pipes. So that's going to be the applicant. We're not looking to take on an II project for the applicant, nor does the city work on the time frame the applicant works on. So this project, as I said, for II removal would have to be done prior to them getting an occupancy permit for this building. So other than that, I think that's it for wastewater. So stormwater and environmental. Once I wrap up, we have both Jonah Bernardo from Horsley Witten, who can in addition talk about stormwater environmental, and we also have Rod Emery from World Tech, who can talk about traffic and parking. But I'll just go through our memorandum first. The applicant still needs to address Horsley Witten's comments in regards to the phase 1 report that they have out there for environmental. The applicant is, they stated they're looking to tie into the private drainage system on Southwick Road and into the public drainage system for stormwater on King Street. It is correct. They are reducing the pavement. They are putting in traditional catch basins, 4-foot sumps with hoods. Not really a big push. I mean, a big stretch on that. Is it better than what's out there? Yes, but I don't know when J.B. Thomas Hunt was put online, but a quick Google search says around 1907. So yes, they're providing better standards than they did in the 1907 standards, but we've come a long way in 113 years. In fact, we actually have to get an EPA permit nowadays. We're regulated by the federal government, what we're allowed to do for stormwater through our MS4 permit. So with that being said, as we said before, and we said from the beginning of the project to the applicant, if they're looking to tie into our system, we want to see a significant amount of infiltration on their property to reduce the amount of storms. Well, won't reduce the amount of storms, but to reduce, I guess, the exasperation that downtown Peabody experiences in the flooding situations. Our memorandum had stated that just in, let's see, 25 years, we had flooding in October 1996, June 1998, April 2004, May 2006, March 2010, then again in March 2010, October 2011, and December 2014. Between the Mother's Day 2006 storms and the 2 March 2010 storms, the city experienced over $15 million in storm damages. So before we entertain them tying into the municipal system for their private stormwater that they want to dispose of, we want to see extensive infiltration. We also want to see water quality inlet structures put in beyond the catch basins that they're proposing. We want to see a water quality inlet structure put in before the water goes into Southwick Road, and we want to see it before it goes into King Street. Those are 2 pretty standard things, the water quality inlets. Just housekeeping, there is some, I believe, some fill in one of the infiltration areas. They need to call for that to be removed. And what material they're going to place back in. And we're also looking for details for the infiltration areas. If the board were to entertain this project moving forward, we'd be looking at some point to talk about conditions of approval, which one would be a finalized plan of the roof connections being provided to our department. A bed bottom inspection, that's where we go out and take a look at the soil itself once they dig open the infiltration areas. We would recommend that they would do closed caption inspection, television inspection of Southwick Road to make sure that there's no major deficiencies in that private drainage system out there. And then we'd also be looking for, just for housekeeping purposes, I'll let you know, 2 weeks prior to any real work happening out there, the stormwater pollution permit prevention plan, which was required by the EPA, that for us to get a copy, for them to sign the operation and maintenance plan that they provided, and to get a copy of an illicit discharge statement, basically saying that they don't have illicit discharges, which is basically cross-contamination between wastewater and drainage. Like I said, I'll let Janet speak further on stormwater. In regards to traffic and parking, Carl, if it's possible, could you just bring up the picture that says pavement? I just want the board to realize that, as the applicant said, part of the road that's being utilized is their property, so it appears like they're looking to take that back. I just want the board to realize what that means for Southwick Road itself. So, Carla, we're on the we're looking at the directory, but the image, the PDF hasn't come up yet.
You might be need to now share again to share that PDF instead of what you're looking at. Like, so stop the share screen and then start it again with that document.
So those cones represent basically that'll be the remaining edge of the Suffolk Road. Those cones are roughly the applicant's property line, which they'll be developing as part of the project with the dumpster pad, parking turnaround area, and associated grading. So I just wanted to let the, and Carly, is there another picture you can scroll down?
Wait, I have a question.
Yes,
Could you say that one more time?
absolutely. So those cones will be the edge of Southwick Road. Those cones are roughly the applicant's property line, based upon measures they took off their existing conditions and proposed plans off of utilities that are out in the street. We're able to determine roughly that will be the edge of their development. So as you see, Southwick Road will be able to maintain traffic. There was a pickup truck parked there when I took the picture. But I just wanted to make sure the board realizes when the applicant says that the dumpster is on their property, that may be true, but where that dumpster location is would be on that section of Southwick that people are traversing now.
So, so is the only buffer, so to speak, between the dumpster and any of the people that living there is just that area that we're looking at that's street, basically.
Yeah, so that dumpster would be somewhere in that area that the cones are in.
I think what he's saying is that the road appears much wider now than it really is.
I know,
Because
I'm just concerned of the placement of the dumpster close to residents, as far as smell. You know, I didn't realize that before until now, that it could be a potential problem.
So if you want to just scroll down, Carla, just to give the board just there's that there. So that's where Southwick Road will be. And then I think there may be one more picture further down. So then as it goes down the street. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware. That's what their plans propose. Like I said, that's their property. But that section will no longer be drivable by the public. Which, as you can see, there's a fence in that picture. So for snow removal, it will probably be somewhat problematic in the future, potentially, depending on what the applicant has on their property to dump snow into. So my suggestion would be just make sure the fire department is aware of the new turning radius out at the intersection of Southwick and Ellsworth. I'd recommend the fire department being made aware of that. The next one I just wanted to quickly talk about was parking. So the applicant is looking to reduce their parking from 310 spots down to 202 spots, which would give them a 1.52 spots per unit. I'll let Rod weigh in further, but I don't think we're opposed to the reduction, but we are opposed to them having the number of compact units in addition to all that. So our recommendation is, if the board is willing to allow them to go down from 310 parking spots to 202 parking spots, that they hold a maximum of 20 or 10% of their parking to be compact. And when I say compact, there was a discussion last time about cars being built smaller now than they were in the past. But just to give the board and the public an idea of what compact really is we're talking Ford Focuses, Honda, Toyota Corollas, Honda Civics, Chevy Cruises, Nissan Versas, Nissan Sentras, Volkswagen Golfs, Mazda 3s, Volkswagen Jettas, or subcompacts if people drive a Kia Rio, a Honda Fit, a Chevy Spark, a Mini Coupe, a Chevy Bolt, or Chevy Sonic. Those are really what, you know, is designed to park in these compact spots. It's also a recommendation that these parking widths aisles should be increased to 24 feet wide. And it was already talked extensively, but our recommendation would be if the applicant believes that ride sharing and public commuting is going to be the answer to reduction in their parking and not cause the residents and visitors to overflow onto the city streets, then they really should think hardly about investing in North Shore Transportation Management Association, and not just agree that it's a great in concept, but to actually commit to a time frame of that. We recommended 5 to 10 years, but that's obviously the board's decision. That's just a recommendation from our department. The next is snow storage. As the applicant pointed out, that's an internal matter, but we do believe that snow storage does matter, and the fact that if snow does fill up in their parking lot and they do not truck it out in a timely fashion, that will reduce parking and cause people to start overflow parking into the neighborhood. And so, I mean, ultimately, I think it's up to the board, but I think the number of parking spots, the number of compact spots, and the number in the area of overflow of snow storage all seems to be one driving factor, and that's the number of units in the development itself. So they're all related to each other. The other items that the applicant has somewhat agreed to was the implementing some changes down at the intersection of Lowell, King, and Endicott. And that would be updating the clearance times for vehicles and pedestrians, installing high visibility backplates, installing there's two incandescent light bulbs still in that intersection to bring them up to LED. Putting in ADA compliant push buttons. We're missing 2 countdown pedestrian crossing signals to put them in, and install video detection that would pick up all 5 approaches of the intersection itself. Those are all things that we're looking to have the applicant take on. As Barry so eloquently stated at a previous meeting, if you're waiting for the city to do it, it may take a long time. So we're not in the position to implement this project. I mean, to update clearance times, that's going to be a consultant similar to Vanessa Associates or World Tech. To install high visibility backplates and LED light bulbs and push buttons and cross signals and cameras, that's not something Public Services is doing in-house. That's something we'd call a consultant to have to come in. So that is something we're not looking to entertain or take on ourselves. We're looking to see have that as a condition that the applicant take that on. And the same thing with King and Ellsworth, the concrete sidewalk, ADA ramps, and pedestrian push buttons and countdown pads. We're hoping that most people will try to walk in the neighborhood. So, and that we'll have more walkers out there. So these things are really driven by development coming in. And it's the same thing. We're not looking to take on these projects. We feel as though the contractor who's going to redo their sidewalks in King and Ellsworth is probably more than capable of putting in handicap ramps at that intersection. And then the same thing, whatever company goes down to Lowell Street is more than capable of doing that work up at Ellsworth. And I just point out to the board's attention that, they do have an 11.5% grade going down into their parking garage. That could be problematic in the wintertime. And the only way to solve that is to put a lot of salt, which will then end up into the drainage system and into the drainage system of ultimately down to Lowell Street via Southwick Road. So I only have one other, I guess, comment. And Carla, could you put up the other picture for the utility pole? So before Carla zooms out, there's some white chalk you can see on that pole right there you're looking at. Carla, could you zoom out a little bit? That will roughly be the height of their proposed retaining wall for the project. Just to give the board a sense of where that retaining wall will sit. it'll sit behind that utility pole. So I believe the applicant's going to need to work with both PMLP and Verizon in respect to what kind of clearance they're going to hold. I'm not sure, is there another picture, Carly? Can you scroll down? So there's a utility pole there. So there'll be a parking spot behind it. So when people get out of their car, I'm not sure what kind of clearance they're going to have to the bottom wires, but that's something the applicant's going to need to address with the utility company. But I just wanted to point out to the board the height of that wall they're proposing off of Suffolk Road. So I guess, Barry, to answer your question that you had earlier, I don't think it matters who does the project. I think, or any of those particular projects, I don't suspect there will be a whole lot of warranty from whatever company does it. So if something were to happen and 5 years out, the city's going to have to inherit the fix. And that doesn't matter if the city does it through a contractor or they hire their own contractor to do it. Ultimately, once they do the infiltration reduction in the city sewer system, it'll be back to the city sewer system. Once they do the handicap ramps and pedestrian upgrades at Ellsworth and King, it'll be back to the city. And once they do any infrastructure down on Lowell Street, it'll be right back into the city's hands to maintain. So, thank you. I think that's, if you wouldn't mind, if we could let Janet, if she has any additional comments with respect to stormwater, and then Rod Emery in respect to traffic.
Hi, my name is Janet Bernardo, and I'm a professional engineer with the Horsley Witten Group. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So I guess the majority of the stormwater issues, I think the applicant is able to adjust, or they are willing to have a condition of approval on. We talked about the biggest item really is having additional infiltration and water quality within the property. And as Wayne Keefer noted, they are improving existing conditions. There are 3 design points. The design point that has the largest reduction, I believe, is Elmsworth side, which it's the King Street that has maybe a 4% reduction. I kind of forget the, I think it was a 4% reduction go down King Street. But the soil at the site is hydraulic soil group A, which is a very good soil. And the groundwater is relatively deep. And there's a lot of pavement that they can put subsurface infiltration beneath. So there's a lot of opportunity on this particular site. There's many sites that it's really tight and there's no space, or the groundwater is really high, or the soil is really lousy. So they have a lot of opportunity. And because of all of the flooding that does happen in Peabody, it seems like reducing the flow going down King Street in Southwick would really be a benefit to the city. And it seems like not kind of losing that opportunity on a site that has good soil and is good depths of groundwater would be unfortunate. We mentioned that part of having a redevelopment site is improving it as much as you can. And I don't think they've done as much as they can. They can do more. And they definitely are improving, but from the where I'm looking at it, I think that they can do a little bit more. So I would recommend that. And as well as, you know, they infiltrate, they'll improve water quality as well. If they can infiltrate some of that parking lot runoff instead of, I mean, the roof runoff is great. It totally helps. But the water quality is coming off of the pavement and the cars that are, you know, tracking salt and sediment and everything else, and getting some of that improvement of the pavement. It would be a big improvement to the city system.
Great, thank you, Janet. Rod, if through the chair, we may have Rod.
Yeah. Rod? Make sure you unmute.
Yeah. I think Will did a very good job covering the issues, the 2 or 3 issues we had on traffic. The 1.5 parking ratios, we are satisfied with that. But I think it's that delicate balance you have between providing enough parking, but not too much parking. So it's about impervious area. It's about not encouraging more traffic to be using the site. So it's a well-researched number that I think is a combination of ITE references and this MAPC study that was done, on parking. The one thing I would say about the compact spaces and the aisles, it's a little bit of a false parking, because as you get tight on the aisles and the width of the spaces, a certain number of cars just won't be able to fit in the spaces. So they'll encroach on adjacent spaces and you won't get to utilize the full number of parking spaces. It's not just an operational issue. It's just an outcome of having too many compact spaces in our opinion. And we did talk about the TMA. I think that's an important element of this. If there is a problem with the viability of the TMA, then we would stop making the payments. But I think it's important to commit to the TMA. That's it.
Okay. Comments, questions from anybody in the board? Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Or Jason, would you?
Excuse me, yeah, through the chair, if I could invite Wayne to respond to some of the programmatic issues that were raised. But by way of context, a lot of the issues that were raised are unrelated to this development. A lot of the issues that were raised deal with existing city infrastructure, whether this project, this development is built or not. And this notion now that we no longer have a choice between doing the infiltration and inflow, or inflow and infiltration project and paying the fee, well, that's on its face unequal treatment of this project compared to others in the city.
Fran, if I may respond to that.
No, I'm not finished.
Well, Jason, I'd like to respond to that before we move on to another topic, if I may, Fran.
I'm sorry?
Let's just have, Will wants to just say something.
So, Jason, the time bomb memorandum came out and it states, we may not have capacity in the system for your project. You need to do the infiltration reduction project by your property in order to achieve enough flow in the system. Without you guys doing the project and you guys building this project out, will possibly be susceptible to raw sewage overflowing manholes in Lowell Street and backing up into residents' basement.
Through the chair, that's entirely and grossly speculative.
Well,
And
that's what the purpose of the
Mr. Politz, I'm not going to speak over him, but Mr. Politz is introducing a new issue. When Ty and Bond came out with their memo, it was either pay the fee or do the project. That's a fact. And now all of a sudden, it is do the project and nothing else because of some speculative infrastructure problem that exists today.
So I have a suggestion. This sounds.
All I can say is both sides need to inform the board and really that we appreciate what you have to offer, but you can do your argument somewhere else. We have a lot of nice information from both sides, and you're here to inform the board, and we make the decision. If you have differences of opinion that are based on that, please take it somewhere else. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barry, because I was going to say it similar to that. I think that there's some issues, technical and very serious issues that have come up. And I think Mr. Politz and Attorney Panos have to either get together over a cup of coffee, or at some point you have to tweak this and figure out just exactly where you have to come to terms with something, because Barry is right. You know, we can't listen to argumentative things tonight.
I'm sorry.
And I don't mean argumentative. I just mean that this seems very, very serious, and it seems it has to be ironed out. But I think it has to be ironed out face to face with both of you, not like this. That's just my opinion. You know, Ezra, do you?
Sure.
Yeah, if I could just weigh in, I mean, I think Barry's point is spot on, and I think Fran, your instinct is a good one. Although I would point out, you basically got this where your peer reviewers have reviewed it, your town officials have recommended the best they can see to make this work. They've given you clear conditions. I think really it's now a matter for the applicant to either live with those conditions or propose, you know, if Jason wants to propose something as an alternative to Will, you know, a sidelong and change the condition, that's fine. But I don't think Will needs to negotiate this out and try to find his, you know, he's been pretty clear about what would make the project work as a condition. You know, if Jason is feeling that condition is illegal or, you know, unenforceable or whatever, he can challenge that later. But I think you do need to move towards closure. And I think Will's given you some pretty clear language. Jason, you know, to the extent Jason has an alternative he might want to propose, that'd be great. But I don't think you need to get in a lot of back and forth here.
Well,
Okay, Jason,
if I may, through you, I am not an engineer. So I would like to invite our project professional to speak on this, and who, without negotiating and horse trading here, may be able to inform the issue a little better. And through the chair, if I could ask him to do that. And maybe he can't, and maybe we have to do a sideline, but I would at least ask the chair to give Wayne Kiefner an opportunity to speak to that and other issues. Because
sure,
there was
Wayne, would you like to speak tonight?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't sure if you wanted us to kind of almost respond to Will after his comments, or if you want us to wait to the end, or if we're just going to pick a couple. But if I may, there's a lot of these we don't disagree with, but they're not necessarily in control. Like, for example, in our control, I should say. For example, the first one about water. We acknowledge there's a 6-inch main on Southwick. It's on the far side of Southwick Road. It's across from our site. We do not have control of that. And our response to that previously was, we'd be happy to take that out if we can get permission to do it. But what we didn't want on that particular one was a condition forcing us to, because we may not legally be able to do that. So I think there's a lot of conditions, or a lot of these we're happy to do if we're able to. I think there seems to be a perception that the project doesn't want to do any improvements of any infrastructure anywhere. But I think the fact is that there's, you know, with the I&I and with the traffic and with the stormwater, sure, we could do more stormwater. We could do less traffic. The traffic issue is not ours. The I&I stuff is not ours. That report from Ty and Bond doesn't say there's not capacity. What it says is there is capacity if there were less I&I. That I&I has nothing to do with this project. Lining and the issue in the Ty and Bond, which I just gave up arguing with them about because we're just at different perspectives, but their concern was capacity. Lining things doesn't give it capacity. It just doesn't. It may take out the I&I, but they're neglecting the difference in pipe diameter that liners cause. So I think a lot of these are, you know, I think it would be helpful to have a sit down to talk a lot of these out. And I don't know if it needs to be in public, because I think we do agree on a lot of these, and I would like to do more stormwater, but there's a limit to how much a project can afford, right?
Well, I think that it's advantageous that everybody's bringing up these points now, but I do think it's more advantageous if whomever needs to get together, especially before the next meeting, you get together, like I said, at a round table and discuss all of these things. These are extremely important issues that have to be ironed out. They have to be worked out. And I don't see them getting worked out tonight over who's muting, who's unmuting, okay, speak, so on and so forth. We do have somebody, I believe, Councilor Charis would like to speak. We obviously will let him speak, but I think it's extremely important for all these points that have been brought up between engineers and attorneys and so on and so forth be talked out, in person, hopefully, and worked out to the best of everybody's ability. I don't see tonight being the night. It's definitely not going to be the night that it can be worked out, because it's impossible to work it out tonight. So think about that for a minute. Let's hear from Councilor Charis. Ed, would you like to speak?
Yes, can you hear me? Very, very simple. The diagram that showed the dumpster to Southwick. I would, again, I'm very concerned that how close that is to the street and to the neighbors. I think it's a much smaller subject matter that you've been talking about, but if you could take another look at that and the location of that dumpster, I believe those residents would certainly appreciate it. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Is there anybody else in the audience this evening that would like to speak? Carla? No. Okay, so I guess I'm going to throw it back to you, Attorney Panos, and just see if you have any thoughts at this point.
Yeah, so just very quickly to discuss the dumpster issue, because you raised it as a concern, Chair, and it came up a couple of other times. I want to point out that dumpster is closer to building A, Wayne, than it is to any abutting residence. And you can bet that if there is a stench or a nuisance caused by that dumpster, well, I don't even want to speculate. We can't allow there to be a nuisance caused by that dumpster. It's going to impact our residents as much as it's going to impact abutting residents, if not more to our residents. So
Jason, I don't want to interrupt. I'm really, really sorry. I don't want to interrupt.
Yep.
Is there a possibility?
Yes.
That you could just maybe take one last look, just take one last look and see if there is possibly anywhere else to put it, so it's not anywhere remotely near any neighbors? Just take a look.
We'll take a look. We have looked at it carefully, and we will take a look in honor of your request.
Okay.
Absolutely. With regard, there was an open issue with regard to the 21E, and I do want to address that. We did have an environmental 21E response prepared. However, in conversations with the applicant, I wasn't really satisfied with the response, and there are some underground storage tanks on site that we are looking at pumping out, testing around, all of that. And I think that really needs to happen before we can tender our response in earnest. So that's happening on Wednesday. The pump out, the testing, and I believe our 21E response will be prepared by sometime the following week, that we will be able to tender to Horsley Witten and wrap up all of our responses. But I really did not want to put out anything half-hearted in that regard, because there are 21E issues that we need to deal with, and we are dealing with them. And so there will be closure to that issue, certainly before June, and hopefully with enough time for Horsley Witten to review the response in time for June to wrap up the civil. I do take to heart, and I'm a big fan of meetings, whether virtual or in person. So I would like an opportunity to sit down and discuss with Will, members of our team, to kind of resolve and bring to conclusion these issues. But I don't want to lose the forest through the trees here. We are and I mentioned this in my comments, we are prepared to cough up some money to address some of these pre-existing issues unrelated, that are historic and unrelated to this proposed development, particularly with regard to the intersection of Endicott, King, and Lowell. We need to look at these other conditions, some of which are kind of fresh, particularly taking away the choice of I&I, the project, as opposed to paying the I&I fee. That's pretty new tonight. And so we need to focus in on that. But it's not, I just want to make a point, and I'm going to leave it there tonight without the expectation of resolving it. I'm just putting it out there. There isn't an endless bucket of money to pay for a wish list. And we need to hone in on what is important, and we need to hone in on what is a wish list. And we need to make this project better. And you have our commitment that we will make this project better, because we've already demonstrated that we've done that through the course of, I don't know how many months, 8 months now.
Okay.
So we will commit to doing that, Will. Over the next week or so, we would like to do either a Zoom or an in-person meeting, whatever your pleasure is. If you can corral your peer review consultants and we can sit down and go through your most recent memo. I'm heartened by the fact that, as I indicated, your most recent memo is 6 pages plus 1 page for World Tech comments. And it's not 20 pages like we've started out. So I do think that there is area of common ground, as Wayne Kiefner indicated.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
We do have Mary Bellistracci that would like to speak.
Thank you. I just had 2 quick things that I wanted to add. I live at 1 Southwick, which is directly across from that huge smokestack where the light pole was. And the 2 things I'm concerned about, on the plans, it shows a dumpster right up at the edge of the property down by me. So I'm a little concerned about that. But my bigger concern is the fire hydrant, because that's the only fire hydrant for our street. So that's a real concern for me.
Okay.
I can speak to the fire hydrant issue, and Wayne, I invite Wayne to also speak to it, but I personally saw it a couple of weeks ago when Wayne and I walked the property. And the spouts are facing, it's clearly on the hospital property, and the spouts are facing toward the hospital. So I'm personally unclear whether it's a hospital fire hydrant or whether it's a public one. Wayne, can you speak to that?
It used to be a city-owned hospital, so it didn't really make any difference, because, I mean, I'm just concerned about my house burning down and you saying, well, sorry, that's my fire hydrant, not yours, so.
Sure.
Sure. Through the chair, if I may. So Jason, yes, that hydrant is on our property, but we will have the 3 new hydrants to service our buildings. So we can spin that hydrant and just have it face Southwick. It's not a problem. It's no big deal.
Are fire hydrants like private and not private?
It's on our property. So yeah, it's private.
But is it going to be 12 feet up in the air, or is it going to be?
No, it'll be at grade on Southwick. We'll spin it and relocate it as we need to. It'll serve Southwick, no longer our property. Does that make sense?
And Wayne, if I could ask you through the chair, those water spouts that the water connections that the city wants us to cap and tie, where are those? Are those in front of?
Those are in front. They're up a little further. They're in front of the garage. That's pretty close to kind of right away there. And they're literally just a few feet off that garage. And that was the concern. We're happy to remove those and put in a straight piece of pipe. Not a problem. I just don't know if we're able to.
Okay. What I was hoping was that they were on Miss Bellistracci's property and we could work out a situation where we could access and, anyways,
Okay,
we'll deal with it.
So that's a concern. So let's hope I guess my hope right now is that Mr. Politz and Attorney Panos and everybody else involved can get together and hash out all these serious concerns and not leave them for another board meeting where we're going to go back and forth and back and forth. I mean, I really think that, you know, if this is going to ever come to be, these concerns have to be talked out. They have to be planned out, and it can't wait for a board meeting to tit for tat back and forth. So I really hope that when tonight ends, tomorrow morning, everybody's on the phone looking at their calendars and checking out when you all can get together with everybody's notes and everybody's plot plans and everything else, and get to the bottom of all the problems and concerns. And then when we come back, everybody's smiling and ready to discuss happily what exactly is now happening. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
And Ezra, you have something to say.
Just towards that end and in that spirit, I think you're right that a lot of this stuff can be worked out and can be worked out, you know, in between the meetings. I believe that we are under a bit of a deadline to, I think the June meeting would probably be the last meeting we have if we finish this by June 30th, which is, I believe, the current extension you got from the applicant. Is that correct? I mean, so this might be an appropriate place to ask, you know, for another 30, 60 days, something like that, just to be sure we have that elbow room to think expansively and finish it. If someone else has, maybe Carla has the exact dates, or somebody, I've just been trying to keep track of that. But
Carla doesn't have them in front of her. Jason, do you?
Yeah, I believe it's June 29th. When are we thinking of continuing?
I'm thinking of what we cannot meet on the 7th. We have a regular ZBA meeting on the 21st. We are listening to Endicott on the 14th. So
I'm going to be there for Endicott on the 14th. So if you want to double up, I'm happy to do that. I'd rather, my personal preference, and it's up to the pleasure of the board, is before we engage in any further, any extensions, I'd like to see how these conversations play out and figure out whether or not, look, there are issues, but I can't gauge their weight or importance. And I am hopeful and optimistic that over the next weeks, we'll be able to iron them out. And as I said, present to the board our resolution to all of them, in which case no extension would be necessary.
So do you want to meet on the 14th?
Yeah. And then at that point, we're happy to entertain the need for any extension, but I think that these conversations need to play out to see where they're going.
we're saying
Okay,
June
so-
14th. Is that June 14th?
June.
Yeah.
Okay, so board members, we must have already decided that we were going to meet on the 14th for Endicott Street. And so since that's already a scheduled Zoom meeting, let's put, what is this? King Street? King Street also on the 14th. Let's also remember that on the 21st, we are going to be meeting in person. That will be our first in-person meeting, June 21st. Everybody smile. You want to see me in person. And don't forget, next week is a regular ZBA meeting, and the 24th is 40 Oak Street. So we are meeting the next 2 weeks in a row, then we have 2 weeks off, and then we're meeting another couple of weeks in a row. Once again, all Zoom. We will not meet in person until June 21st. And at that point, there will be no more Zoom meetings. It will all be in person. Very well organized. and established and sanitized. So, do we have anything else? Does anyone else want to speak, comment? Are we all on the same page? We understand what we're doing. We're happy. I need a motion to continue till June 14th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Then, my dear friends, it looks like this is it. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. We'll see you soon.
Good night.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.